Unit 6, Amos, Prophet of Destruction and Future Hope. All right, so let's go back to our timeline. I've kind of pulled off some of the names because I wanted to focus on one significant time that actually intersects both Israel and Judah. So if I kind of put a line right down the center here, this is a 760 BC. So at 760 BC, you have some stuff that's going on up in the north and at the same time down in the south. So this 760 BC date is important because this was right during the time of the ministry of Amos. So you can see how this line kind of cuts right through his ministry right there, but it also intersects this guy right here, which is the king Jeroboam II, who was the king on the throne of northern Israel during the ministry of Amos. And he had one of the longest reigns of any of the kings of northern Israel. In fact, if you look right after there, it's a mess. Everything that happens after there, after Jeroboam II, it leads toward the downfall of northern Israel, which we'll get to in a second. But so at the same time in the south, what's happening in Judah? So in Judah, we see that this time frame intersects the ministry of Jonah, which we'll look at in the next module a little bit. But the king that is on the throne of Judah is the king Uzziah. We can see him right there. So we have King Uzziah in the south, and we have Jeroboam II in the north. Well, who cares? Like, why does that matter? Well, it's important because the ministry of Amos falls at a very unique time in Israel's history, because this was a time that was of rare strength and prosperity. So they were wealthy, but they were also strong from a military standpoint, because the next great enemy who is going to come in is Assyria, right? The Assyrian dispersion, it comes from the Assyrians, who have not yet become the force that they're going to be when they take northern Israel away, when they destroy it. But here during this time, so Israel kind of is not really threatened by Assyria yet. So they start to grow. They're rich. They're strong. And so there's two primary problems that Amos addresses during this time. The first is the neglect and abuse of the poor. The poor are not being cared for. There is wealth that is scattered throughout the nation, but the poor are not being thought of or cared for. And also widespread syncretism. What is syncretism? It's a word that we used that we learned in Module 1, and it means the mixing of religions of Yahweh with the false gods of the age. So syncretism is everywhere, and the neglect and abuse of the poor is everywhere. So if we look here, Amos, when he prophesies three main things. So Amos's prophecy consists of the coming destruction of northern Israel, which they think couldn't possibly be happening because it's a time of wealth and prosperity. But Amos is basically saying everything that you think is going well is only temporary, and it's going to end, which it most certainly does. But he also prophesies the exile of the people, that the people are going to be scattered throughout the land, which ends up happening by the Assyrians. But he also ends up prophesying the eventual reclaiming of the land. So if we look at some key verses from the book of Amos, this is verse 1:1. It says, the words of Amos, who was among the sheep breeders of Tekoa, right? Amos was a nobody. Tekoa was actually down in Judah, so he actually lived in the south, but his prophecies were to the north, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, the king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. So this is where we get our timeline of Amos. And look at, these are some key verses. These don't go next to each other. But in 2:2, he says, God speaks through the prophet Amos to the nation of Israel. And look what he says. He says, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Now, it doesn't mean that God doesn't know about any other countries. What he's saying is that we have a covenant. I've only made a covenant with you. And because of that, you are special and you're set apart. But also because of that, therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities. So he's speaking directly to Israel in light of the covenants that they have broken. In fact, in verse 7, we see that the Lord said to me, and this is Amos speaking, that the end has come upon my people Israel. I will not pass by them anymore. Hear this, you who swallow up the needy and make the poor of the land fail. Look what it says in chapter 5. Therefore, I will send you into captivity beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. So we see the concern for the poor. We see that they're going to be scattered. But in chapter 9, We also see, look what it says, behold, the eyes of the Lord are on the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from the face of the earth. Yet I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, meaning the south. I'm not going to wipe Israel completely off the map, though I am going to destroy, and I'm going to take the northern kingdom of Israel. I'm going to take it apart, says the Lord. But look what it says later in chapter 9. It says, I will bring back the captives of my people Israel. They shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They will plant vineyards. They will drink wine from them. They'll also make gardens of fruit and eat from them. I will plant them in their land, and no longer shall they be pulled up from the land that I have given them, which is, of course, a prophecy of them returning to the land of Israel, which they currently are in. So a lot happens with the prophet Amos, and he prophesies the end of the kingdom, but the eventual return, which we'll see later in part 2 of this course. But in our next unit, let's take a look at the second prophet that nearing the end of the northern kingdom, and that is Hosea, and he is a prophet of God's covenant love.